A great humanitarian once said that the difference between a career politician and a leader is the politician cares about the number of years served, and the leader just cares about serving. This defines Senator Chris Duenas. He is a seasoned statesman whose focus has always been on being a champion for the masses and a fighter for the truth. Re-elect Senator Chris Duenas, speaking up for you.
I am Chris Duenas, and I approve this message.
Edward Alvarez, Treasurer.
We are agents of change, shining the light on corruption, land scams, children being raped, growing violence, and the wrecking ball of poverty. While we have grown and been able to expose many of the dark corners of our islands because of the confidence you and our advertisers have placed in us, there still is so much more to do, so much more to clean. Kandit's flame must grow brighter. Fuel this fire. If you want the light shined on corruption in our governments, rape and violence against children and women, land scams and poverty, then advertise with us or sponsor our programming in Guam and the CNMI. Call us at 671-922-NEWS or email us at advertise@candidnews.com. This is the future. Fuel this fire.
Thank you for joining us. You're joining us for the Platform 2022 Lieutenant Governor's Debate.
Yes, the second debate in this series, the second debate in the 2022 election season, and the first opportunity to hear from our lieutenant gubernatorial candidates directly. Thank you so much for joining us for this program brought to you by Circle K and Christopher Guam. I'm Filian Guerrero, the executive editor of the Guam Daily Post.
And I'm Ana Silva Tyron. Now, up first, we will have the candidates that will be taking part in the debate.
Yes, and we want to thank them so much for our participation. Of course, we have our current sitting Lieutenant Governor, Josh Tenorio.
Hafiday.
And we have the Lieutenant Governor candidate, Sabrina Salas Matanane.
Good evening, everybody.
And as all debates have, there are rules to make sure that things are respectful, cordial, and orderly. And to explain what our viewers and our candidates can expect, Mana, can you please just give us a rundown of our opening statements, our rounds of questions, and all the stuff that's ahead?
Absolutely. Well, prior to tonight's debate, an independent panel of professionals consisting of Dr. Ron McNinch of the University of Guam, former Senator Dr. Judy Guthertz, Community First CEO Jerry Cruz, businessman Jeff Saavedra, who's the owner of Ignite Juice Bar, and Deputy Superintendent of Education Erica Cruz, they helped design several questions under 9 topics. The topics were provided to each of the gubernatorial camps, but the questions have remained under lock and key. Now, it was just this past Saturday that a coin toss was held where the camps participated in that to determine the order in which the opening statements and closing statement delivery will take place and the rotation sequence for the debate questions. Now, to our left is the timekeeper, Johnny Rosario, who will start the clock for all answers, responses, and rebuttals as soon as the host throws to each respective candidate. And depending on the length of the allotted to each candidate, she'll hold up a sign signifying how much time is left. At first, she'll have the 60 seconds, she'll have 30 seconds, and 10 seconds left. And once the time is up, she will ring a bell, and the moderator will stop the candidate from talking any further. Tonight's debate will also begin with opening statements from the candidates. Each will have 3 minutes to deliver their remarks. Now, there will be 3 rounds of 6 questions. The questions will rotate according to the topic between the candidates. The questions are color-coded by topics and are mixed into this bowl here, from which the host will choose random questions. Now, the candidate to whom the question is first asked will have 90 seconds to answer. The host then will repeat the question for the other candidate, will have 60 seconds to respond, and the candidate to whom the question was asked first will then have 30 seconds to rebut. The moderator will reserve the right to ask follow-up questions should there be one. Each candidate in that case will have 30 seconds to respond. Once these answers and possible follow-up answers are concluded, that question will close and the host will move on to the next question. Candidates may not use the succeeding question periods to respond to the previous questions. Now, candidates are also asked to refrain from interrupting the other candidate during his or her allotted time. If an interruption occurs, the moderator will maintain order and the time will pause during this period so that the proper candidate doesn't lose time during the interruption. Now, upon completing the 3 rounds of questions, each of you candidates will be given 3 minutes to make your closing statements.
So again, with the rules now set and us really anticipating hearing from our 2 candidates for Lieutenant Governor under the Democratic Party of Guam banner, we are going to take a break. Be right back with opening statements. You're listening and watching to Platform 2022, a Lieutenant Gubernatorial debate brought to you by Circle K and Christopher Guam. We'll be right back.
A great humanitarian once said that the difference between a career politician and a leader is the politician cares about the number of years served, and the leader just cares about serving. This defines Senator Chris Duenas. He is a seasoned statesman whose focus has always been on being a champion for the masses and a fighter for the truth. Re-elect Senator Chris Duenas, speaking up for you.
I am Chris Duenas, and I approve this message.
Edward Alvarez, Treasurer.
We are agents of change, shining the light on corruption, land scams, children being raped, growing violence, and the wrecking ball of poverty. While we have grown and been able to expose many of the dark corners of our islands because of the confidence you and our advertisers have placed in us, there still is so much more to do, so much more to clean. Kandit's flame must grow brighter. Fuel this fire. If you want the light shined on corruption in our governments, rape and violence against children and women, land scams and poverty, then advertise with us or sponsor our programming in Guam and the CNMI. Call us at 671-922-NEWS or email us at advertise@candidnews.com. This is the future. Fuel this fire.
Welcome back to Platform 2022, a debate between our 2 lieutenant gubernatorial candidates under the Democratic Party of Guam banner. It's now time for the opening statements.
And we'll start with the Lieutenant Governor candidate, Sabrina Salas Matanane, with your opening statements.
Hafide and good evening, everyone. All of you know that I am not a politician. I've been a journalist for over 25 years on Guam. I've been a voice for all of you. So you know I'm going to fight for you. You know me because you've welcomed me into your homes for the past 25 years, whether it was for a cup of coffee in the morning, listening to the link, or watching the news at 6 o'clock during prime time. So again, you know I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to fight for people like Will. I met him just last week. He lives with his elderly and sick mother in the village of Decolonization in a 2-bedroom home. They are 2 months behind in paying rent and face eviction next week. Her pension is $900. The rent is $1,100. Will works a graveyard shift so that he can take care of his mom during the day. And every night he goes to work, he worries and prays that she's going to be okay when he returns to her the following morning. I'm here to fight for people like Carolyn. Carolyn held a medical fundraiser just over the weekend. She was raising money, of course, for medical treatment, and although she should be traveling off island, like so many of you, she can't afford it. She can't afford to get a plane ticket. She can't afford to get hotel accommodations. She's just raising money so that she can see a doctor here on Guam. I'm here to fight and be a voice for people like Ton, whose son is autistic. He is packing up with the family and they are moving off island because we just can't provide the support and resources his grandson needs. I'm here to fight for people like Cassidy. She's raising money because her husband was hospitalized for COVID-19. They have a hospital bill of $38,000 for just 7 days. These are real stories, and these are real people. Tonight, I'm sure Josh will talk about the need for a continuity of leadership. I'm going to talk about the need for a change in leadership. He's going to talk about my lack of experience, but I'm going to say, look at what experience has gotten us. He's going to talk about the wonderful programs that they've rolled out in the past several months. I'm going to talk about the problems that still exist today and the struggles we face every single day. Josh and I are friends no matter what. But tonight I'm here to be a voice for you and to fight for you because we believe that you deserve better.
Thank you, Mrs. Salas Matanane. And now we'll take a look over at the Lieutenant Governor, Josh Tenorio, for his opening remarks.
Half a day, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to come into your homes and speak with you about our ideas for the future. The first thing that anybody that is running for Lieutenant Governor should face or ask themselves is, are they ready to assume the responsibilities of the governor on day one? I think that I do have those qualities to make those decisions, to guide you, to improve your quality of life, and to make sure that I'm there to help you anytime you need it. Leadership is a test, and the first big test of leadership for me happened at a very young age. I was 20 years old, going to school, working to pay my tuition, and on Sunday, October 23rd, 1994, right around 10 a.m., my dad got hit by a drunk driver and eventually died. I had to assume responsibilities for being head of my household. And each time that I face a problem, a calamity, an issue, I always reflect on that time that I was able to overcome that adversity, that time that I was able to be there for my family, and that time that I got inspired to follow a career that has led me both in the public and private sector, in all three branches of government, always trying to do the best job that I possibly can, each and every day. Over the last 3.5 years, Governor Lulian Guerrero and I have had the privilege to work for you. And despite COVID invading our shores 2.5 years ago, we've managed to keep our promises. We said that we would focus on restoring our finances and stabilizing them, and we did. We paid off an $83 million general fund deficit. We promised to stabilize public services, and we focused on public health, safety, and education, making sure that our public servants, those critical employees, were paid what they were worth so that we could stop the hemorrhaging and stop their exodus out of government service. This is not the time to change, and that's because we have so many things that we're working on to benefit you. The future is very bright. I'm very optimistic about the economic opportunities, but I'm so optimistic about all the projects that we're focusing on. Projects to build a new hospital, projects that will improve your quality of life. This election, you're going to have two choices for the primary election. You're going to have a choice between a team with a record of accomplishment or a team that doesn't have that experience. You're going to have a choice between a team that represents Guam proudly to our nation's capital or a team led by someone who has disgraced us. You're going to be having a choice for a team that's going to be there for you at all times. I humbly ask you to vote for Lou and Josh and to give us 4 more years to continue working for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, and thank you for joining us, whether you're watching live on Kandit's Facebook page, listening live on The Point, or if you missed the opening statements, no worries. There's going to be a rebroadcast on PBS Guam very soon, so stay tuned to their website and social media platforms for more information. You're watching and listening to Platform 2022, a lieutenant gubernatorial debate. We will be right back after this.
A great humanitarian once said that the difference between a career politician and a leader is the politician cares about the number of years served, and the leader just cares about serving. This defines Senator Chris Duenas. He is a seasoned statesman whose focus has always been on being a champion for the masses and a fighter for the truth. Re-elect Senator Chris Duenas, speaking up for you.
I am Chris Duenas, and I approve this message.
Edward Alvarez, Treasurer.
Better hear what I've got to say because you won't get to hear it.
4 years ago, we pledged to make healthcare more accessible, raise nurses' pay, and invest in our healthcare system. We have kept that pledge.
We increased income limits so that more families qualify for Medicaid, and we've made important advancements in telemedicine.
Our community health centers responded to COVID-19 while continuing to provide critical services.
The dedicated teams at our local and private hospitals provided quality, compassionate healthcare, even in the toughest situations, all while maintaining the highest standards.
Our healthcare partners, like our clinics, have also stepped up to answer the challenges, and we cannot thank them enough.
But if we are to provide the best in health services, we must build a new hospital.
Let's continue to move forward. We are all in this together, and we humbly ask for your vote. This is Governor Lou Leon Guerrero, and I approve this message.
We are agents of change, shining the light on corruption, land scams, children being raped, growing violence, and the wrecking ball of poverty. While we have grown and been able to expose many of the dark corners of our islands because of the confidence you and our advertisers have placed in us, there still is so much more to do, so much more to clean. Kandit's flame must grow brighter. Fuel this fire. If you want the light shined on corruption in our governments, rape and violence against children and women, land scams and poverty, then advertise with us or sponsor our programming in Guam and the CNMI. Call us at 671-922-NEWS or email us at advertise@candidnews.com. This is the future. Fuel this fire.
And welcome back. You're watching Platform 2022, the Lieutenant Governor's debate, brought to you by Circle K and Chris for Guam. And you're also watching us on Kandit News and listening on The Point. And if you happen to be watching the rebroadcast, you're watching it on PBS Guam. And now we're going to start with the first round of questions. And Phil will draw the first question.
That's right. Thank you, Chris Duenas, for sponsoring us tonight. So we will begin with Mrs. Salas Matanane, and her first question will be on the topic of health. How long will it take for vulnerable populations like the elderly, veterans, and people with special needs to be able to receive most of the medical care they require locally rather than needing to go off island to treat cancer and other diseases? You have 90 seconds to answer.
Thank you for that question. This is an issue that actually hits very close to home for me. Before my father passed away, he wanted to come back to Guam. And my mom, she still lives in the States, and she has all sorts of medical problems. She's in and out of the hospital, but she really wants to come back to Guam. And I think so many families are kind of in a situation that I'm in, where we can't bring our family members to Guam because we just don't have the ability to treat and doctors and specialists to treat them. And I think what we need to do, and what Congressman Michael San Nicolas and I will do, is recruit and retain the specialists and physicians we need on Guam.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor, you have 60 seconds for your response.
Thank you. This is exactly why we need a new hospital. We have we have pretty good healthcare providers, but we don't have enough. We're about 100 doctors short, and the governor has impaneled a partnership, a public-private partnership between the public and private healthcare clinics to focus on finding ways to increase recruitment. But in order to attract that kind of talent, we have to have state-of-the-art adequate facilities for them to practice. And for our people deserve that. And I'm really surprised that my opponent's running mate announced his opposition to a new hospital at his speech. I think that the investment is very necessary. We need to come together, and we need to embrace the need for a new hospital, embrace the Army Corps report, and get to work. Well, that's what we're doing. We're getting to work to build a new hospital. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Mrs. Salas Matanane, you have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
Well, thanks, Josh, for acknowledging that we are short physicians, and I believe you said it was 100. But I think what needs to be clarified is that the congressman in his State of Congressional Address did not say that he didn't support the construction of a new hospital, because we absolutely do. We realize and we recognize that we need a new hospital on Guam. The issue is putting it at Eagles Field, where ancestral landowners completely disagree with, and doctors, as you heard from Lillian Posadas in a recent
Thank you,
Rotary
Ms.
meeting.
Salas Matanane. The next question will be answered first by Lieutenant Governor Tenorio, and it is on the topic of the federal government and the military buildup. Lieutenant Governor, supporters of the military buildup have long touted its potential economic benefits, but sometimes the millions in available federal military contracts don't make their way into the hands of a local business or a local worker. What will your administration do to secure the benefits and payoffs that have been promised by both the Pentagon and local leaders?
Actually, in the construction industry, local companies have a big hometown benefit. It's very hard for you to get up to get an operation together, and it prompts off-island companies to partner with the local construction companies so that we can get adequate. They can be able to provide a real reasonable solution, a real reasonable proposal. But what needs to be focused on is making sure that we have adequate labor, and that is really what is something that we need. I wish the congressman would be doing more in terms of trying to secure the pathways for alien labor. A few weeks ago, he introduced an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act. He quickly removed it because it was going to be detrimental to local business. I suggest that when he comes up with proposals, that he would go out and talk to people about it, try and get their input, so we can figure out what the outcomes will be. The other thing is that we have to make sure that companies are paying their fair share of taxes. And I would say that since we've been into office, our tax collections have been increased because we have been making sure that people are paying their fair share. Those are the ways that the people of Guam can benefit from the military buildup and the military expansion. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Mrs. Salas Matanane, you have 60 seconds for your response, but I'll repeat the question. Supporters of the military buildup have long touted its potential economic benefits, but sometimes the billions in available federal military contracts don't make their way into the hands of a local business or a local worker. What will your administration do to secure the benefits and payoffs that have been promised by both the Pentagon and local leaders?
Well, this is an issue that has been talked about and reported on several times, and there has been efforts by Vice Speaker Tina Munoz Barnes to collect what is owed from military contractors to ensure that they are paying their fair share of taxes, because there is no denying that they aren't, because there was a report from the U.S. Department of Interior citing millions in uncollected revenues, and I believe the Office of Public Accountability is currently conducting an audit.
Thank you, Mrs. Salas Matanane. Lieutenant Governor, you have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
Recently, the governor and I met with the admiral and with military officials, and they've informed us that not only is the buildup going to extend through 25 and 26, but it's going to extend through 28, 29, and 30. This means that we have multiple years more of growth and economic expansion that is going to benefit the businesses and the people of Guam. And what we're looking for right now, what we need right now, is a credible partner with the Department of Defense to make sure that Guam gets its fair share of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Our next question will be answered first by Mrs. Salas Matanane, and it is on the topic of education. A pilot program to deploy school resource officers into GDOE campuses has already expired. Considering the amount of local incidents of lockdowns and student violence and concerns parents may have given school shootings stateside, do you feel that regular law enforcement presence at public schools should be reinstated? Should officers assigned to these campuses be armed? Mrs. Salas Matanane, you have 90 seconds to answer.
Parents shouldn't be scared when they send their children to school. I know there are times when I send my son Brock, and I worry about him every day. Just last week there was an incident at one of the schools where a man walked in with what appeared to be a rifle. So when you ask if I believe that we should have school resource officers on campus, I absolutely do. Whether they are unarmed or armed, we just need someone on campus protecting our students, whether it's training up school aides or hiring security officers, because we do not want a Uvalde happening on our island.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor, you have 60 seconds for your response, but I'll repeat the question. A pilot program to deploy school resource officers into GDOE campuses has already expired. Considering the amount of local incidents of lockdowns and student violence and concerns parents may have given school shootings stateside, do you feel that regular law enforcement presence at public schools should be reinstated? And should these officers assigned to campuses be armed?
I am in favor of school resource officers. In fact, when I was the administrator of the courts, I had a pilot project when I sent probation officers as school resource officers to try and help Department of Education with their needs. And I think that program should return and it should be expanded. But I think we also should listen to the children, to the kids. In April, we convened a youth summit, and our youth proposed that they wanted to have more mental health education in the schools, and they want to have more cultural diversity programming in the school. They see some bias going on with a lot of the migrant populations here, and I want to be part of assisting them and helping them address these issues so we can reduce school violence and we can make those schools safer. And I think that's something that I'm looking for. I'm really happy that both of us are in agreement for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Mrs. Salas Matanane, you have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
I just want to thank Josh for kind of reminding me that the SRO program was implemented and started at the judiciary. So then by reminding me, that kind of tells me that you were one of the ones that made the decision to discontinue it because it didn't perform a basic court function.
Thank you. Our next question, to be answered first by Lieutenant Governor, is on regional and international policy. Do you believe the United States and the freely associated states of Micronesia should pre-vet those seeking to come to Guam and other host communities to ensure FAS citizens already have the sufficient means of support in the United States required to remain here before they are allowed to immigrate?
Yes, I do. This is something that the governor and I have spoken with the leaders of the freely associated states about, trying to make sure that we don't have stranded populations. We have folks that have been homeless because they've come out, they did not know what the laws were, they didn't have any means, and sometimes it was just a basic misunderstanding. They thought they could live with their family in federally subsidized housing. They found out they couldn't. And so I think what needs to happen is to increase programs like the Micronesian youth programs and Micronesian Services Agency, so that we can help educate those Micronesians, those folks coming in to try and get a better life. I think one thing I think about is our Chamorro population was just the same. Right after the war, they migrated to the continental United States to try and get a better economic opportunity or to get education, and nothing is wrong with that. And those things I think we should embrace. And I think that there's definitely room to improve. I think that with the compact renegotiations coming up, there's certainly going to be a lot more resources that the U.S. government is going to pump in. So for far too long, we've been shouldering a lot of these costs, and I'm hopeful that with the new geopolitics in the region and more attention from the Biden administration, there's going to be more resources to get this done. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Mrs. Salas Matanane, you have 60 seconds for a response, and I'll repeat the question. Do you believe the United States and the freely associated states of Micronesia should pre-vet those seeking to come to Guam and other host communities to ensure these citizens already have the sufficient means of support in the U.S. required to remain here before they are allowed to immigrate?
Well, first, I believe this is a federal issue. What I want to talk about, though, is how we treat our COFA Micronesian brothers and sisters. They are part of Guam, and I believe that we need to provide better opportunities for them to lift them up, and we need to stop putting them in a bad light and help them, because we are one Guam. And also a shout out to Manyetlu.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Salas Matanane. And Lieutenant Governor, you have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
Thanks for that. Thanks, Sam Taichino and your team from Manyetlu. It is a federal issue, and unfortunately, your running mate has been absent on this issue. The governor wrote a letter trying to get a seat in the renegotiations of the compacts, and she was told that it would be reserved, or at least that authority would be with the congressman. And I haven't heard anything concrete or specific about the congressman's efforts or his participation in the renegotiations of the freely associated states and their compacts. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. We have two more questions for this round, and Mrs. Salas Matanane will answer first. A question on public safety. Do you believe our island is safe? If yes, what is your main evidence to support this view? And if no, what would you do differently to improve this situation? You have 90 seconds for your answer.
The answer is no, and I don't think I need to provide evidence. I think people can just watch the news or read the paper, and there's a crime committed every single day on Guam. We are nowhere near the police force that we had several years ago. When you drive up and down Marine Corps Drive, at least on my way here, I didn't see one police car on the street, and I'm not saying that they're not doing their jobs. I'm just saying that they're just so busy responding to emergencies, and the same can be said for the Guam Fire Department. And although I know that the administration, they held a press conference and a photo op to show off the brand new police cars and ambulances, the problem is we just don't have the manpower for them. And so, are we safe? Absolutely not. And also ask your question, are we safer than we were 4 years ago? And the answer will be no.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor, you have 60 seconds for your response, and I'll repeat the question again. Do you believe our island is safe? If yes, what is your main evidence to support this view? If no, what would you do differently to improve this situation?
Well, we ran 4 years ago because the island wasn't safe, and we've been doing everything we can to make sure we shift resources to the public safety officers in terms of equipment and supplies, and also pay. We're losing so many law enforcement officers to federal service because they weren't paid enough. And we were able to implement a pay increase that is going to be sustained. It is going to be sustained. When I heard your running mate's speech, I wondered whether or not he was going to take back those raises. That seemed to be what he was implying when he was talking about the raises. The law enforcement officers are worth the raise, and that is the cost of public safety now, and the cost needs to go up. Your running mate had 6 years in the Guam legislature to expand the budgets of public safety officers, and he didn't. And what we've done is we've expanded and directed discretionary funds so that we can provide that kind of support for when they needed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Mrs. Salas Matanane, you have 30 seconds for your rebuttal.
I think the public should not be fooled. These pay raises were through an executive order. And although the pay raises were for all of law enforcement officers, it still doesn't address the issue of parity. When I interviewed the chief of police, one of the last interviews I did while I was at KUAM, he told me that this administration hired 80 officers, but then he also clarified when I pressed him on it, he said 70 officers actually resigned and moved to different agencies that pay more money.
Thank you, Mrs. Salas Matanane. We have one final question for this round. The Lieutenant Governor will answer first, and the topic will be political status and decolonization. Of the available political status options for Guam, statehood, free association, or independence, which do you believe is best? Would you advocate for the island to remain an unincorporated territory rather than politically mature into one of these three options? Lieutenant Governor, you have 90 seconds to answer.
I believe that the people of Guam are definitely they have the capacity. We've proven that we have the capacity to do well in any government that we decide. And the role of governor and lieutenant governor is to make sure that we follow the law and identify the challenges and establish and provide a process so that the people of Guam can decide once and for all. The congressman, though, who's going to be the governor, he's proposed who's trying to be the governor, he has proposed tribal status. He's proposed a constitution. He's been in federal office for nearly 4 years, and not once has he introduced legislation that would address or make it easier for the political status vote to happen. And so I think that as governor and lieutenant governor, we're going to continue. We had to deal with a federal lawsuit which could have been resolved with federal legislation. And I think that by bringing everybody together and giving them the status options, when we're able to do that, they'll choose the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Mrs. Salas Matanane, you have 60 seconds to respond, and I'll repeat the question. Of the available political status options for Guam, statehood, free association, or independence, which do you believe is best? Would you advocate for the island to remain an unincorporated territory rather than politically mature into one of these three options?
I support any relationship that allows Guam to stand independently, but also have this connection and protection of the United States. But since you seem to constantly attack my running mate, I will say this, that 4 years ago in a debate at the UOG Fieldhouse, you promised that we were going to have a plebiscite in your administration, and we still haven't had one.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Salas Matanane. And Lieutenant Governor, you have 30 seconds for your rebuttal.
Sometimes things happen. We didn't predict that we would have COVID invade our shores, but it did. Nor could we predict that we would have a federal lawsuit and a court decision that would prohibit us from following the mandate of our Guam law. What needed to happen would be for the congressman to introduce federal legislation and remove that obstacle so we can get this done, resolve a historical injustice, and proceed and get our people to decide. Thank you.
And we're just going to go do a quick follow-up question, since neither of you really answered whether or not, or any of the three options that you would choose. I'll ask the question again and give you each 30 seconds to respond. Of the available political status options for Guam, statehood, free association, or independence, which one would you think is best, most suitable for Guam?
And
we'll start with
the Lieutenant Governor.
Lieutenant Governor.
I'm not going to say which one, and that's because if we're going to be entrusted to carry out a fair election, it will be irresponsible for the people who will be responsible for carrying out the election to indicate a preference. And so I would like to invest my time making sure that the three task forces for independence, free association, and statehood have the proper platform and the resources to educate the public about those options, and that's what's happening right now. Thank you.
Mrs. Matanane?
I also, well, actually, like I said before, I promote anything that will supports independence, but also has a close connection with the United States.
Okay, thank you very much.
And we will be right back with more of our debate, Platform 22, 2022. This completes this round of questions, and when we come back, we'll have more information and more responses from our two lieutenant gubernatorial candidates running under the Democratic Party of Guam banner. We'll be right back after these.
A great humanitarian once said that the difference between a career politician and a leader is the politician cares about the number of years served, and the leader just cares about serving. This defines Senator Chris Duenas. He is a seasoned statesman whose focus has always been on being a champion for the masses and a fighter for the truth. Re-elect Senator Chris Duenas, speaking up for you.
I am Chris Duenas, and I approve this message.
Edward Alvarez, Treasurer.
We said we would make public safety a priority, and we did. We believe that law enforcement officers are important, and we gave them a pay raise because we value their sacrifices to keep us safe.
We said we would ensure there are more police officers in our villages, and we delivered. We promised to provide them new vehicles and the tools they need to protect you, and we have.
We assured you we would promote community policing, and we are working with neighborhood watch programs in the villages.
We pledged to expand drug treatment services to help people become productive members of society.
And so we opened a detox unit and are expanding capacity.
4 years ago, we made these commitments and we delivered.
Let's continue our progress. We are all in this together, and we humbly ask for your vote. This is Governor Lou Leon Guerrero, and I approve this message.
We are agents of change, shining the light on corruption, land scams, children being raped, growing violence, and the wrecking ball of poverty. While we have grown and been able to expose many of the dark corners of our islands because of the confidence you and our advertisers have placed in us, there still is so much more to do, so much more to clean. Kandit's flame must grow brighter. Fuel this fire. If you want the light shined on corruption in our governments, rape and violence against children and women, land scams and poverty, then advertise with us or sponsor our programming in Guam and the CNMI. Call us at 671-922-NEWS or email us at advertise@candidnews.com. This is the future. Fuel this fire.
And welcome back to Platform 2022, the Lieutenant Governor's Debate here on Candid News, and you're listening live on The Point.
And we're brought to you by our friends at Circle K. And thank you also to Christopher Guam and the committee to re-elect Lou and Josh for bringing you the second debate of the 2022 election season and the very first debate between lieutenant gubernatorial candidates running in the contested Democratic Party of Guam primary. We will begin our second round round of questions. Again, just to remind everyone, I will be reading the questions, choosing them at random, repeating the questions, and our candidates will have an initial 90 seconds to answer, a 60-second rebuttal for the other candidate, and the first candidate to answer will wrap up with a 30-second response. This next question will be answered by Mrs. Salas Matanane first, and it is on the economy and the cost of living. Many residents work multiple jobs but still don't make the equivalent of a full-time salary. How will your administration support and incentivize better paying private sector jobs or benefits like healthcare and retirement, which can improve a worker's quality of life? You have 90 seconds to answer.
Right, this all goes back to the cost of living and the crippling of our community and our families, and how this administration, I believe, hasn't really done a whole lot to address the cost of living. They've been hoarding all of this American Rescue Plan funds. There's $300 million that remains in the Bank of Guam. All I can say is, please, Governor, release the money. Give it to the people. Give more stimulus funds payments and give out premium pay to our private sector employees that worked during this pandemic.
Lieutenant Governor, you have 60 seconds to respond, and I'll read the question again. Many residents work multiple jobs but still don't make the equivalent of a full-time salary. How will your administration support and incentivize better paying private sector jobs or benefits like healthcare and retirement, which can improve a worker's quality of life?
Let me first focus on healthcare, and we have a law on the books that we're working to implement called Healthcare Paratodu, and it really is a pathway to providing health insurance to those employees working that do not have any health insurance offered by their employers. In a meeting with the Guam Hotel and Restaurant Association, they talked about how much they're in need of employees. And what we discussed is doing everything we can to improve the economic situation they're in so they can pay their employees better and hopefully provide some benefits like health insurance. Now, on the ARP funds, my opponent's running mate, when he first came out, told us to make long-term investments. Now he's saying to blow the cash. We've seen what blowing the cash has done to the government of Guam for over 30 years. And there just has to be a balance. And when we provide aid, when the people need it, we provide it. We did it in stimulus, we did it in All Rise, we did it in the program of Salapi.
Mrs. Salas Matanane, you have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
No one's asking you to blow the cash. What we're asking you is to stop hoarding the cash. You got over $500 million in ARP money over a year ago, and you have half of it still sitting in a bank gaining interest instead of going to the people's interest.
Thank you, Mrs. Salas Matanane. The next question, which will be answered by the Lieutenant Governor first, is on the topics of infrastructure and the workforce. What is your assessment about how the local government evaluates, approves, and monitors proposed development projects? As Lieutenant Governor, what development projects would you support and oppose? Is there a red line in your administration that your administration won't cross in this area? Lieutenant Governor, you have 90 seconds to answer.
The government has had a systemic problem with processing building permits and all of those kinds of things. And one of the first things we did was improve the Guam Land Use Commission and their process, incorporating new methods so that they can meet. But what I'm working on and what I'm leading is digitizing the online and establishing an online permitting process so that across the regulatory agencies of Guam, developers and residents who are trying to build homes will always developers know the status of those applications. They'll be able to hold their contractors to account in case they're not getting the full information from them. And by providing that kind of assistance, we're definitely going to help the economic expansion of the government and of the island. Well, then one other thing that we've done is we've issued a development guidebook on development here on Guam with digital forms and everything. Those things are going to be able to give developers information on everything that's required so that everybody understands from the get-go what is their responsibility. And we can make sure by doing that and improving our processes, then we can facilitate responsible development. It needs to happen in order to expand the economy and deliver on higher paying jobs.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Mrs. Salas Matanane, you have 60 seconds for a response, and I'll repeat the question. What is your assessment about how the local government evaluates, approves, and monitors proposed development projects? As Lieutenant Governor, what development projects would you support and oppose? And is there a red line that your administration won't cross in this area?
Josh pointed out some of the problems with and delays with permitting, but I want to point out the fact that this administration appointed a permit czar, I want to say a year or 2 years ago, and I'm not even sure anything's been done. What has he been doing, Josh?
Thank you, Mrs. Salas Matanane. Lieutenant Governor, you have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
I think that Governor Carl Gutierrez was dispatched to recover a industry that he is well experienced expanding during his time in public service. But what I would tell you that the red line for us and the big line for us is ancestral remains. Anytime that ancestral remains are unearthed, we have local legislation that tells developers to hold in place. It requires the most careful considerations, and even in military projects, the governor has made sure to protect ancestral remains and to make the military design around them.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you.
Our next question will be answered by Mrs. Salas Matanane, and it is on the topic of questions specific to the office of the Lieutenant Governor. The access granted by elected and appointed officials to media and residents has changed, affected by COVID-19. Now that we are transitioning to a new normal, how accessible will your administration be to reporters and your constituents? For instance, will you continue the relatively new practice of limiting questions asked to our governor, delegate, and other public servants? Mrs. Salas Matanane, you have 90 seconds to answer.
Well, I love this question because I was in the media, right, for 25 years, and I felt that when we had, during the pandemic and the governor was holding the press conferences, yes, we were limited to 2 questions, and I believe it was 2 rounds. When Mike and I are elected, we're not going to have a limit on questions. Maybe we might hold a press conference for an hour or 2 and have the media ask questions, but you can expect us to be accessible.
Thank you, Mrs. Salas Matanane. Lieutenant Governor, you have 60 seconds to respond. I can repeat the question.
I'm fine. I can answer it.
Thank you, sir.
I think one of the positive things that's come out is that we have stream meetings now. All board meetings are streams. But for the office of the Lieutenant Governor, things I've done is I've moved and I've streamed all my meetings. I chair the Interagency Council on Homelessness, the Island-Wide Beautification Task Force, the Guam Product Sale Commission, the Guam Green Growth Steering Committee, and I don't limit any questions. I've reserved time at the end of my meetings and invite the media to cover it. And I think that that's probably a practice that definitely I'm going to maintain. I think that it's been working, and I think it is a useful tool to get information out to the people. Thank you.
Mrs. Salas Matanane, you have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
And again, as I mentioned earlier, we will be transparent. We will be accessible. We won't resort to being petty and implement a gag order for several months and not talk to certain media because of pettiness, really.
Thank you. Our next question will be answered by the Lieutenant Governor first, and it's on the topic of health. Lieutenant Governor, more often than not, the island doesn't have enough capacity to care for every resident seeking to treat their addiction to crystal methamphetamine and other substances. Where will your administration find the funds to expand local drug treatment and prevention programs?
Thank you. And let me just say that addiction issues have been something that I care about a lot. I've been doing a lot of work during my time at the judiciary, expanding drug courts, trying to recover lives. And here in the executive branch, we've been working on projects. We have a partnership with the Salvation Army. They're almost done constructing a women's treatment facility that really is focused on women trying to reunite with their children. As a consequence of their addiction, they've had their children taken away, and this gives them the tools, the adequate tools to get back and get those families together. I'm also excited that we're recovering the Talafofo cottage homes that the last administration abandoned, and we're converting that into inpatient maltreatment. It's going to service a large population, and it's going to add into the network of services that we've been able to put on the table. The Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center has been focusing on this. We've been embracing evidence-based practices, and we've also extended that into the prison facility, making sure that we treat addiction for those that the underlying cause of their crimes has been addiction. But the single most important investment that has been made has been the reopening of the chemical detox unit at the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center, which had been closed for more than 18 years. It got closed because of a typhoon. We focused on it. We have medical professionals that are able to deal with people that are on the verge of overdose, and we can get them straight into treatment. So much more work to be done.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Mrs. Salas Matanane, you have 60 seconds for a response. I can repeat the question. More often than not, the island doesn't have enough capacity to care for every resident seeking to treat their addiction to crystal methamphetamine and other substances. Where will your administration find the funds to expand drug treatment and prevention programs?
Well, it's good to hear that the administration is working on all of these recovery and rehabilitation programs, but what this means to me is that we are losing the war on drugs, and I'm not even sure if we're even fighting the war on drugs, because one of the first things this administration did when they came into office was dismantle the multi-agency drug task force, and here we are now. The price of meth is cheaper than a bag of groceries. We're going to reinstitute a drug task force, launch a full-on war against drug dealers who are pushing this poison on our streets because it's tearing up our families, it's eroding our sense of community, and eroding our sense of respect for one another.
Thank you, Mrs. Salas Matanane. Lieutenant Governor, you have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
One thing I'd say is that we have police officers embedded in the FBI and DEA task forces. That's where our partnership is to be very effective. We have customs officers that for the first time have been deputized as postal inspectors to catch drugs. We have interdicted more drugs during our term of office than the last administration. But back to the issue of it's a 30-year addiction to methamphetamine that we're battling. And so by pushing more funds to Togi Guam and other nonprofit organizations that are doing the business of...
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to our next question, which will be answered by Mrs. Salas Matanane first on the topic of the federal government and the military buildup. While it may be difficult for Guam's governor to unilaterally secure more voting representation in Congress, other states ensure their issues are considered by helping their residents be appointed to jobs in federal agencies, including the White House. What will your administration do to ensure Guam has a greater impact and consistent consideration within the federal government? You have 90 seconds to answer.
We have so many talented and intelligent people on Guam and from Guam. Our administration will do whatever we need to recommend and appoint these individuals to jobs in the federal government. Just recently, we saw several local individuals from Guam, Senator Regine Bisco-Lee, Senator Joanne Brown, Bob Klitsky, and Attorney Vanessa Williams, recently appointed to an advisory committee to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights.
Thank you, Mrs. Salas Matanane. Lieutenant Governor, you have 60 seconds to respond. I can repeat the question.
Go ahead, please.
While it may be difficult for Guam's governor to unilaterally secure more voting representation in Congress, other states have ensured that their issues are considered by helping their residents be appointed to jobs in federal agencies, including the White House. What will your administration do to ensure Guam has a greater impact and consistent consideration within the federal government?
I think it'll be helpful if we had a partner in the congressman's office or congresswoman's office, hopefully in the next term, to identify and push the administration to make those appointments. It's going to be pretty hard for my opponent's running mate to make any recommendations when he has been the recipient of the one bipartisan action of the Congress, a bipartisan unanimous referral for a public condemnation and a referral to the Department of Justice for things that have shamed the island. I think that probably, if they're successful, probably the recommendation of Sabrina would definitely hold more weight than the recommendation of her running mate.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Mrs. Salas Matanane, you have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
Well, I wasn't sure what the connection was there, other than for Josh to continue and our opponents to continue this symphony of spin regarding the ethics conclusion of the ethics investigation.
Thank you so much. We have one question left in this round. It will be answered by the Lieutenant Governor first, and it is on the topic of education. One of the Guam Department of Education's main missions is to prepare all students for life. How will your administration make sure children attending public schools are ready for college or a career when they graduate from their senior year of a public high school?
Thank you. Guam Community College is embedded in all of the public high schools and providing opportunities for high school students to get a vocational education. And what they've done is done a remarkable job getting career technical education incorporated into all of the high school curriculum. Some of the schools have maybe about 30% already of the graduates that are getting these certifications. And in fact, I'm a product of Guam Community College Vocational High School before it got incorporated into DOE. And so I understand the value. When I was a senior, I had a job. I was in accounting. Accounting was my shop. I was an accounting clerk in the private sector. But the other thing I think we focus on is what we're doing to catch up on time. And with the education stabilizations funds that directly were under the governor's control, the governor chose to push that out to nonprofit organizations and educational institutions and provide a wide variety of opportunities for the kids to regain the time. Everything from focusing on parent training for students with autism, subsidizing and paying the technology fees for those in college at the university, providing additional opportunities for people to get their adult high school diploma, or directly focusing on the socio and economic needs and the counseling needs of our kids. Those are all things that I think that can work hand in hand to continue the progress of Superintendent Fernandez, get those graduation rates up, and get our kids off for success.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Mrs. Salas Matanane, you have 60 seconds to respond, and I can repeat the question. One of the Guam Department of Education's main missions is to prepare all students for life. How will your administration make sure that children attending public schools are ready for college or a career when they graduate from their senior year of high school?
The Guam Education Policy Board, of the Guam Education Board, and the Guam Department of Education recently approved their 5-year strategic plan, and it is a living, breathing document. It is a roadmap that allows GDOE to effectively lead and manage all of its educational plans and programs now and into the future. The plan includes specific benchmarks to improve test scores, and our administration will work with GDOE and provide the necessary resources they need so that this plan can go forward.
And Lieutenant Governor, you have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
I'm pleased that we're able to revisit or bring back the Summer Youth Internship Program. There are more than 1,300 high school students that are out there doing some work, and I'm so happy because it has now given them pipelines, new ideas to pursue careers. We have kids at Public Works throughout the government that are now focused on careers, and I think those are the other things we can do to help them and find those pathways for success.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor.
And that's going to conclude the second round of our questions. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Thank you, Mrs. Salas Matanane. And we'll be back right after this break.
Yes, stick with us.
A great humanitarian once said that the difference between a career politician and a leader is the politician cares about the number of years served, and the leader just cares about serving. This defines Senator Chris Duenas. He is a seasoned statesman whose focus has always been on being a champion for the masses and a fighter for the truth. Re-elect Senator Chris Duenas, speaking up for you.
I am Chris Duenas, and I approve this message.
Edward Alvarez, Treasurer.
Our workforce is changing and our students need to be prepared to face the challenges that lie ahead.
Real investments in education require real action so that our kids have the best chance to succeed.
We gave teachers a pay raise because we value the important work they do for our children every day.
We provided funds that support children with special needs and their families so that their challenges can be addressed.
We promised to rebuild Simon Sanchez High School, and we are.
We expanded connection to the internet and community programs to empower our children.
We expanded access to training, and we provided scholarships so anyone interested could get certified.
4 years ago, we made these commitments and we delivered.
Let's continue our progress. We are all in this together, and we humbly ask for your vote. This is Governor Lou Leon Guerrero, and I approve this message.
We are agents of change, shining the light on corruption, land scams, children being raped, growing violence, and the wrecking ball of poverty. While we have grown and been able to expose many of the dark corners of our islands because of the confidence you and our advertisers have placed in us, there still is so much more to do, so much more to clean. Kandit's flame must grow brighter. Fuel this fire. If you want the light shined on corruption in our governments, rape and violence against children and women, land scams and poverty, then advertise with us or sponsor our programming in Guam and the CNMI. Call us at 671-922-NEWS or email us at advertise@candidnews.com. This is the future. Fuel this fire.
And welcome back to Platform 2022, your Lieutenant Governor's debate.
Yes, and we want to say thank you so much to the people that supported this educational effort, to our voters. As we mentioned, it is the second debate of the 2022 election season, the very first between two lieutenant gubernatorial candidates. And so we want to thank so much Circle K, Christopher Guam, the committee to re-elect Lou and Josh, and a special shout out because this
Island
is Guam,
Cuisine.
Island Cuisine. We
Yeah,
have to give
JB's
thanks to
watching,
the people
so-
for the food. Thank you,
Yes,
JB. Thank you,
all.
Island Cuisine.
Thank you to all of our sponsors for this evening. And we'll move on to our third round, the third and final round of our questions here in the debate.
Yes, this question is going to be answered by Mrs. Salas Matanane first, and it is on the topic of regional and international policy. The compacts of free association provide that any immigrant who has been admitted into the U.S. under the agreement who cannot show that he or she has sufficient means of support in the United States is deportable. How will your administration enforce this provision, particularly for COFA migrants who are criminal offenders? You have 90 seconds to answer.
For me, I've seen a lot of court documents, especially in federal court, and cases that have been filed. And reading them, I definitely feel that something has to be done, because you do see individuals that come in to Guam from the FSM that are flagged because they have prior convictions. So definitely, I think we need to do a better job in vetting them.
Thank you so much. Lieutenant Governor, you have 60 seconds to respond. I can repeat the question. The compacts of free association provide that any immigrant who has been admitted to the U.S. under the agreement, quote, who cannot show that he or she has sufficient means of support in the United States is deportable. How will your administration enforce this provision, particularly for COFA migrants who are criminal offenders? You have 60 seconds to respond.
Unfortunately, we can't enforce it. If we could, we would. But we really would like ICE to focus on those that have these violent criminal offenses and return them to their island of origin and make sure that at the borders, which they're in charge of, that they don't readmit them. We have pushed them to try and even address this illegal Chinese immigrant issue. That's the big issue, especially given the national security concerns that we have and our interest to protect our bases. And so I know the governor has met with the Undersecretary of Homeland Security. She convened the local and federal law enforcement agencies yesterday to find paths to be more aggressive and to stop the flow of these illegal aliens coming in from the Northern Marianas that were paroled from China. That's the big priority, and that plus the violent criminal offenders, they need to go.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Mrs. Salas Matanane, you have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
With the issue of the illegal Chinese immigrants that recently made their way into Guam from the CNMI, a boat from the CNMI, what I was kind of surprised and shocked about was the reaction from our local law enforcement officials that basically were saying, well, that's a federal issue, there's nothing really that we can do about it. So that just kind of concerns me, and I think we need to do better.
Thank you. This next question will be answered by Lieutenant Governor Tenorio first. It's on the topic of public safety. With near daily reports of children being victims of family violence and sexual abuse, what will your administration do to reduce these numbers so fewer kids grow up with traumas that risk them becoming adult victims or adult offenders?
This is the reason why I spent a lot of time focused on giving more resources and expanding the number of folks that we have at Child Protective Services. I keep a regular tab on this on a weekly basis, working with the Department of Youth Affairs and Public Health, trying to make sure that we expand the number of social workers and investigators that come in. And this kind of job is not for everybody. We see a lot of burnout. Who wants to be in a situation where you're going to have to witness some of the most horrible things that you can on Guam? It's just terrible. And so between catching them and continuing the efforts in the schools, the reason why we've been able to catch a lot of this is from early detection by the teachers, by getting the kids to talk about and to be educated about a good touch and bad touch, bringing in clinicians there to help kids that are at risk or that are in danger. And so I think that the big priority is rescuing the kids and then doing our part to expand the number of placements for them. We have stood up a foster home in Barragata Heights. We're working with the nonprofit organizations to expand the number. I'm identifying another home that's going to be used for emergency placement so that our social workers don't have to stay up overnight trying to find placements. So I think the first step is going and rescuing them. And then, of course, getting the heavy hand of the law to those that are victimizing them.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Mrs. Salas Matanane, you have 60 seconds for a response. I can repeat the question. With near daily reports of children being victims of family violence and sexual abuse, what will your administration do to reduce these numbers so fewer kids grow up with traumas that risk them becoming adult victims or adult offenders?
I believe a lot of these crimes stems from drug addiction. One of the last stories that I did while I was at KUAM was a case of family violence where there was a child who was he got trapped in a car basically while his father was inside sleeping, coming down from his high. And there was another story that I did where there was a toddler who was sleeping in the bedroom while his parent was smoking meth in the room. And so for me, it just goes back to how we are losing the war on drugs on our island.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor, you have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
I agree that drug abuse definitely is the underlying cause for a lot of these cases. But you can't be hopeless if you're going to try and counter and push back on a 30-year problem. You have to be optimistic, and you have to have problem-solving skills, and you have to inspire people to come out and do their part. And I think that by focusing resources, attention, and partnerships with the nonprofit community, especially those that are former addicts, that know that there is a better path, those are ways that we can
Thank you,
help.
Lieutenant Governor. Our next question will be answered by Mrs. Salas Matanane first. It's on the topic of political status and decolonization. Do you support the reunification of Guam and the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands? Why or why not? You have 90 seconds.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer. I absolutely do support the reunification of Guam, and I think it's and the Marianas is something that we should seriously consider. I believe together, united as one, we're stronger.
Lieutenant Governor, you have 60 seconds to respond.
I too agree. I'm in favor of reunification, and I think some steps that we can take is as soon as we can, and the Northern Marianas is ready, let's back and start working on the economic integration that we've already started, trying to make sure that we can standardize laws, try and see where we could piggyback off each other as we continue to expand our resources and expand the opportunities for our people. We're one people, and I'm looking forward to it, and I definitely am in favor of this and look forward to working on this.
Thank you. And Mrs. Salas Matanane, you have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
And I agree with Josh. Together we are stronger. Together we can advocate and fight for our economic needs and the preservation of our culture in the Marianas.
Our next question is on the economy and the cost of living. Lieutenant Governor Tenorio will answer first. The pandemic proved how vulnerable tourism is to a global health emergency. What new or fledgling industries will you boost in the next 4 years in order to diversify our economy and create pandemic-proof jobs and business opportunities? How robust will they be in your upcoming term in office?
Thank you. Early on in the pandemic, we partnered with the Guam Chamber of Commerce and with other business organizations to develop an economic diversification working group. They started with 24 different areas that they looked at. They've now consolidated them into 6 action areas. And in this, we're looking at transshipment, additive manufacturing. The governor, when she was at National Governors Association, invited big companies like Google and others that have technology that would be strategically placed here so they can begin production and can begin to have export business. Focusing also on agriculture and aquaculture. Our administration has created a central market at the farmers market. We have given resources to get the Fishermen's Co-op renovated. And those are movements not only to address food security, but to create economic viable industries. I think one of the best decisions, I believe, is that finally the Guam Economic Development Authority has incorporated agriculture production and aquaculture production to be a focused priority economic plan for our island. The other thing, though, is we cannot abandon tourism, and we have to, of course, double down on our efforts and start beating the records we already started beating and bringing back those tourists.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Mrs. Salas Matanane, you have 60 seconds to respond.
You.
I can repeat
Thank
the
you.
question.
It's all right.
Okay.
You know, what we saw during this pandemic, businesses that were forced to shut down and some unable to recover and reopen to this day. A lot of people, because they just can't keep up with the cost of living, have moved off island. So we're experiencing a brain drain on our island. And so it's kind of difficult for me to sit here and come up with the solution in 30 seconds. All I know is that we need to fix the problems of our people today.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor, you have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
One of the things that we did was work with our partners at the Guam Legislature, Senator San Augustine and others, to come together and create the LEAP program that allowed us to help and give pathways for businesses to stabilize their operations, to make sure that they had enough funds that would pick up after the direct federal aid they received from the Small Business Administration and chart their plans for the future. That definitely is something that we're going to continue this working partnership, but also making sure that we invest in infrastructure that's necessary for them to thrive.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor.
And I have a toss-up. I just wanted to ask both of the candidates if there is an interest in either of your administrations in the potential for an industry dealing with cannabis. We'll start with Lieutenant Governor.
Absolutely. I think that this is going to be a definite revenue generator for Guam. We're the administration that actually worked with Senator Rigel to get cannabis legalized, not only following and implementing the will of the voters for the medicinal program, but embracing the trend and finding safe pathways for recreational cannabis to be implemented here in Guam.
And Mrs. Salas Matanane?
Well, for those of you who've seen any of my stories, you know that I don't smoke weed, but I'm cool with people that, are connoisseurs of cannabis and entrepreneurs. I think it's unfortunate, though, that the legislature, the rules and regulations lapsed into law without any kind of approval by the Guam legislature. But for Mike and I, we definitely support the cannabis industry growing.
Thank you, Mrs. Salas Matanane. Time flies when you're giving a lot of information to our voters, so I just want to clue our listeners and our viewers in that we have just 2 questions left in this debate. The penultimate question, as they say, will be answered by Mrs. Salas Matanane first on the topic of infrastructure and the workforce. How would you describe the current condition of Guam's highways and village streets? What would you do as governor to be more responsive to filling potholes in our villages and more efficient when completing major improvements on routed roads that can cause major traffic delays while they're underway? You have 90 seconds to answer.
Well, I was just in my home village of Hoggett just over the weekend, and I was with one of our supporters, and he was taking me around to see family, and there was potholes everywhere, and the roads, a lot of them still aren't paved. I definitely wouldn't wait, though, just months before an election to begin paving roads when we could have been doing this years ago.
Lieutenant Governor, you have 60 seconds to respond. I can repeat the question. How would you describe the current conditions of Guam's highways and village streets? What would you do as Lieutenant Governor to be more responsive to filling potholes in our villages and more efficient when completing major improvements on routed roads that can cause major traffic delays when they're underway?
roads are in a state of improvement, and we have done a tremendous amount, including when at the height of the pandemic, when we fixed that horrible Malolo highway that was ripped up by the solid waste trucks that were going for everybody's trash was going down there, and yet the people of Malolo and Inalahan suffered the consequences. And so we had a moral imperative to go out there and repair them first. We had a very greatly executed Route 1 repair. We have Route 9, Route 5. There are a lot of roads out there. And the mayors, we've empowered the mayors to identify these roads so that we can bring the repairs, working also with the private sector to make sure they bring more people online, because the military was sucking up all of the resources. Finally, we're able to get things done, and no matter what, we are going to get it done.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Mrs. Salas Matanane, you have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
The mayors actually, because I've been covering the story, actually provided a whole list of roads in their villages that needed to be improved years ago, and for years nothing has been done about them. And so I think there's no denying, Josh, that all these road improvements we're seeing before an election is just to get votes.
Thank you, Mrs. Salas Matanane. As I mentioned, we have now arrived at our final question for this lieutenant gubernatorial debate. It's going to be focused on the office for which our two candidates are seeking your support, the office of the Lieutenant Governor. We'll begin with Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio. The expression goes that a lieutenant governor is one heartbeat away from being the governor during their elected term in office. If your running mate becomes permanently incapacitated while in office, are you ready and capable of leading our government and island at a moment's notice?
Thank you. And I definitely will not expect and do not expect our governor to be incapacitated. And certainly I do believe that I have stepped up to the challenge. I've proven to the people of Guam that I can and I do have the capacity and the competence to be the governor. And so definitely I would say that I'm ready to serve. But one thing I can tell you that is different in our administration, we only have one chief of staff. We unify our office. We made sure that we eliminated areas for misinformation or for confusion. And that is a sign of a very strong, close, strategic partnership. And I see my job as Lieutenant Governor making sure that I'm number one backup, and of course, make sure that I'm also number one critic. And between this relationship, we try and give our best and give the best solutions that we can for the people of Guam, and we're always ready to improve. Thanks.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Mrs. Salas Matanane, I can repeat the question. The expression goes that a lieutenant governor is one heartbeat away from being governor during an elected term in office. If your running mate becomes permanently incapacitated, are you ready and capable of leading our government and island at a moment's notice?
Thank you for that question. You know, I've been here for you and your families for the past 25 years, and I understand your struggles. And yeah, I would say that I'm ready. I wouldn't have signed up to run with Mike if I wasn't, because for me, all that really matters is for you to know that you can trust me to be there for you, to listen to you and to lead. Whether it's Mike, or I, we're going to be a governor we're not going to be a governor that commands and demands. We're going to be a governor that takes your commands and demands, because we work for you. And our executive team we will be surrounding ourselves with will have the same motivation and drive to move our island forward.
Thank you, Mrs. Salas Matanane. Lieutenant Governor, you have 30 seconds for your rebuttal.
Thank you very much. One of the responsibilities I think that I'm able definitely to perform in the governor certainly has empowered me to come into action is managing disasters, making sure that I'm able to tag team with her as we engage our federal authorities, and making sure that we're able to seize opportunities and overcome barriers in providing services to the people of Guam. I think that our pledge is always going to be improving the quality quality of life for the people of Guam for the time that we're here in this office. This office is very temporary.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor.
And that's going to wrap up our third round of questions for the Lieutenant Governor candidates. I would like to thank our sponsors before we go into the break. When we come back, we'll have our closing statements. But our sponsors tonight are Island Cuisine.
Yes, so great.
Chris for Guam, Circle K, and the Committee to Re-elect Lou and Josh.
And once again, you're watching Platform 2022 live from Hagåtña on Facebook, listening on the radio, and you might even be watching the rebroadcast on PBS Guam. So thank you so much for joining us for the very first Lieutenant Gubernatorial debate of this election season. We'll be right back to wrap it up with closing statements after this.
A great humanitarian once said that the difference between a career politician and a leader is the politician cares about the number of years served, and the leader just cares about serving. This defines Senator Chris Duenas. He is a seasoned statesman whose focus has always been on being a champion for the masses and a fighter for the truth. Re-elect Senator Chris Duenas, speaking up for you.
I am Chris Duenas, and I approve this message.
Edward Alvarez, Treasurer.
We expressed our belief that a strong economy depends on a strong middle class, that small businesses need help to survive in tough times, and new industries are needed to diversify our economic base. The pandemic proved us right in so many ways.
We said we would support tax cuts for small businesses, and we did. We said we would streamline government services to create a more business-friendly environment, and we are. We said we would invest in infrastructure improvements, and we have. We said we would expand opportunities for our people to learn much-needed trades, and we delivered.
Let's continue this progress. We are all in this together, and we humbly ask for your vote. This is Governor Lou Leon Guerrero, and I approve this message.
We are agents of change, shining the light on corruption, land scams, children being raped, growing violence, and the wrecking ball of poverty. While we have grown and been able to expose many of the dark corners of our islands because of the confidence you and our advertisers have placed in us, there still is so much more to do, so much more to clean. Kandit's flame must grow brighter. Fuel this fire. If you want the light shined on corruption in our governments, rape and violence against children and women, land scams and poverty, then advertise with us or sponsor our programming in Guam and the CNMI. Call us at 671-922-NEWS or email us at advertise@candidnews.com. This is the future. Fuel this fire.
Welcome back to Platform 2022, live on Kandit and The Point. I'm Phil Leon Guerrero, Executive Editor of the Guam Daily Post, joined by my friend, longtime journalist, Mana Silva Tyron. We are going to be wrapping up our debate today with closing statements, and just as a reminder to our candidates, you will have 3 minutes each for your closing statements.
And just to remind you, there was a coin toss this weekend that both of the teams were able to decide for themselves where they landed on the opening and closing statements and the order in which they were answering questions. And so we're going to open the closing segment with the closing remarks from candidate Sabrina Salas Matanane.
Thank you. Over the past few years, all of us have been going through a lot, and that includes trying to figure out how we're going to pay our power bills, how we're going to feed our families, how we're going to put gas in our cars, and worrying the next time we leave our homes or go to the store, are we going to be safe? This is not the Guam we want for our children. We need change, and it starts with leadership that it understands your struggles and shares your experience. Mike and I want to thank all of you that we've met and spoken to along this journey so far, and we want you to know that we hear you, we feel you, and we are listening. And what we've heard from a lot of you is that you want change. You want new leaders that aren't your typical politicians that say the same thing year after year. Well, if you want change, you want different, you're tired of the politics, and you want someone real and a leader you can trust, here I am. When you cast your vote on August 27th, ask yourself this question: is your life better than it was 4 years ago? Please vote for Mike and I. We are number 2 on the Democrat side of the ballot. And happy Liberation Day, everybody.
And now we'll get the closing statements from our Lieutenant Governor, Josh Tenorio.
Thank you very much. And I too want to say happy liberation to the people of Guam. When I'm thinking about liberation and just participating in all of the memorials in these last few weeks, I'm thinking about how 81 years ago we had an enemy invade the shores of Guam. A very big hardship was felt by so many people. Pain, hunger, torture, murder, rape, and yet the people of Guam held together. On those marches to Manyengun and Asinan, to Pigo, throughout the island, there were times where people fell, and it was the people, the other people, sometimes strangers, that lifted the others up. We have a culture and an inherent thing in our bodies, in our nature, to help each other. And that's what Lou and I are about, helping the people of Guam, helping other people. And when COVID invaded our shores, our people again came together and brought each other up. They were able to go out there and get those vaccinations. They were able to go out there and make sure that they kept their families safe in a very horrific time. Nobody's ever dealt with this issue before. It's never been experienced in modern times. And yet we came together, and despite all of those adversities, we managed to deliver on our promises. We focused on stabilizing our finances, and we did. We focused on making sure that our public service employees in health, safety, and education were paid what they needed to be paid. We ended 3 receiverships and restored our credibility with our federal partners. This election, it's going to be a choice about moving forward or staying behind. Moving forward to a hospital, moving forward to an economic expansion, moving forward to return tourism, moving forward to diversify the economy. And when you make that decision and you ask yourself, who do you trust? Who has that experience to get us through this time and to see better days? I think you heard tonight that we're going to give you hope because we can deliver. You need hope, not hopelessness. You need somebody that is going to stand on a record of accomplishments. A team that is focused on standing on the honor of all those that were before us. A team that is going to represent Guam proudly. And a team that says a team that believes that we all did it together and not just one person. So when you go to the polls and you start on Friday for early voting, please vote for us. Vote for Lou Leon Guerrero and Josh Tenorio, and give us 4 more years to help you. Thank you, and Sidus Masi.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Thank you, Mrs. Salas Matanane. We really do appreciate your time, and thank you for engaging with our voters. It's not an easy position to be on your side of the table, and we very much appreciate that you took some time out of your very busy schedules to ensure that we can better inform our voters and our residents with this very important decision. As the Lieutenant Governor said, starts Friday, and that is just a shout out and a reminder to tell everyone that if you're not registered to vote, please register to vote.
And you can do that at the Guam Election Commission's website. The place to go is gec.guam.gov and register online, or you can go to your mayor's office to register to vote
And I'm
as well.
sure the San Nicolas Salas Matanane campaign and the Leon Guerrero Tenorio campaign would like us to remind our residents out there that there are campaign volunteers that can register you to vote. And you can go to your village mayor's office to register to vote. So, there's a whole bunch of ways. It's even easier than ever. So please make sure that you engage, let your voice be heard, and take an active role in choosing the next leaders for the next 2 years and 4 years ahead.
Correct. And that's going to do it for us tonight. Thank you all for joining us. Real quick, our sponsors, thank you for sponsoring this event. Keeps our residents informed on the candidates coming up. Island Cuisine, Chris for Guam, the Committee to Re-elect Lou and Josh, Circle K, and of course, Kandit News and The Point for airing us.
We're live on Facebook. We're live on the radio. We're going to rebroadcast thanks to our friends at PBS Guam. And since I work for a media organization too, I want to just let everyone know that if you want to watch live video, the sights and sounds of the Liberation Day Parade, tune into the Guam Daily Post Facebook page tomorrow, where we will take you literally on the parade route. It's going to be so exciting. And again, just a time-honored tradition that our Lieutenant Governor's candidates mentioned.
Right.
So good night, everyone. We will see you. There's more debates to come, more discussion to be had, and more Platform 2022 headed your way thanks to all of us here at the studios in Agana.
Blessings, everyone.